Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady. We have 3 stories, and the first. Miss, I'm here for extra credit and experience, not work. Second, are you GD deaf? And the third story for dessert, a double bluff at the United Nations. So I hope you're ready for today's stories, and let's get started. Miss, I'm here for extra credit and experience, not work. This happened a few months ago, and I'm still doing a double take at this lady. Backstory time, I'm only 15. I was actually 14 at the time of the incident. I take an American Sign Language class at my high school where I have a super chill teacher. At the beginning of my freshman year, our teacher offered us extra credit for our classes, and all we had to do was hang out at Starbucks for an hour and sign to the deaf/hard of hearing people, or our friends. We had to be signing though. This was a monthly thing, and I went to every one. Also, for information, I was still wearing my school uniform, which is a black collared shirt and dark blue pants. I also looked a little worn out from having to interact with people. I get stressed out super easily. So it's January. I'd already gotten my drink, which makes it even more baffling that this lady confused me for a worker. I sat down with my friend, and we were just signing to each other about the school day. He signed something funny, and I laughed rather loudly. This didn't bother most of the people there, again, who were either deaf, hard of hearing, or students who were doing the same thing we were. Then this lady, in her mid-30s, blonde, with an actual "can I speak to your manager" haircut that I never thought I'd see in real life, comes up to the table where my friend and I are sitting and snaps her fingers right next to my ear. I'm very sensitive to sound, so I flinched as much as I wish I could have told you I played it off like I was deaf. "Excuse me," she scoffed. "I've been waiting in line for over 5 minutes. There are 2 registers and only one of them is being used. Why are you not doing your GD job?" I didn't know what to say. The logo on my school shirt clearly showed I was a high school student, not an employee at Starbucks, and I guess I could have passed for 16 at the time, but I just blinked at her, then looked over at my friend who seemed to be in the same shock I was. Then I looked back at her. "Miss, I'm a student at local high school, just here for extra credit. I'm not an employee," I stuttered out. "Dang you, anxiety," pointing to my shirt, then my drink, then my friend, who was wearing the same thing I was. She stared at me angrily as if she didn't compute what I was saying, then she furiously shook her head as if shaking off rainwater or something. "Don't give me that," she shrieked, putting her hands on her hips. "I've seen you behind the counter before, and you've helped me more than once. Don't be so entitled, you lazy child." At this point, I'm about ready to cry. I've moved my chair and my body to be pressed against the wall, but this lady just kept screaming at me and leaning closer into me. My friend was just as freaked out and frozen as I was. Just as she was inches from my face, practically frothing at the mouth, insisting that I had helped her multiple times, calling me an entitled B-word, and that people like me were ruining the public social experience, my really cool sign language instructor came in and put a hand on her shoulder. "Miss, my student does not work for Starbucks. She's here for extra credit, and I'd like to ask that you please leave her alone," he said very calmly. This lady somehow still did not understand that she was speaking with an anxiety-ridden high school student and that the person's teacher had specifically told her that she doesn't work there, because she immediately batted the hand off her shoulder and tried to step away from my teacher. I say tried to because on these nights the store is really crowded with a bunch of people, so she just bumped into a person who didn't seem too bothered. But I've seen her. She probably has this as a part-time job or something," the lady insisted, pointing a finger in my direction. "I'm 14, I mumbled, what I thought was out of her hearing range. "I can't work here." She must have heard me because she shrieked again, and it reminded me of Redhead from LOZ, although I only later thought of that after it was said and done. "She works here," the lady shouted slowly, like I was too stupid to recognize my own job. Finally, a staff member came over and asked what the deal was. Nobody said anything, so she looked around and saw the terrified look on my face and the shock on my teacher and friends and the absolute rage in her face as the lady stared me down. "Okay," the worker said. "I can guess what's going on here, judging by the screaming I heard and the looks on your faces. Miss, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." This lady had to be escorted out of the shop, red-faced and screaming, pointing at me. The employee who came over initially apologized for taking so long to notice what was wrong. I was just glad she was gone. I got a $30 gift card from Starbucks and never saw that lady again. No idea what happened to her. But geez, lady, please learn to listen to people. Are you GD deaf? Now, I'm usually a very polite, conflict-averse person. But on this particular day, I was sleep-deprived and had a horrible day at the office, drank way too much coffee to compensate, and as a result was kinda on edge. It was freezing outside, so on my way home, I decided to finally buy a portable heater for my bedroom. I stopped at a hardware store and was crouched down in one of the aisles looking at the various heaters on the bottom shelf. "Hey, I need to find bathroom fittings," came a voice from behind me. I clearly heard what the woman said, but assumed she was talking to a store employee somewhere behind me. Hello, bathroom fittings," she repeated, using that entitled princess gets what she wants tone. I was dressed in a suit and tie, so surely she wouldn't be confusing me for a hardware store employee. I kept looking at the heater in my hands. "Hey!" she tapped me heavily on the shoulder twice, so I looked back over my shoulder at her. I saw a mid-30s mother, dressed like she's going to meet the president, inch layer thick of makeup covering her face, holding her 2-year-old son on her hip, and he looked PO'd. "Yes," was all I got out, not expecting the physical contact. "Are you GD deaf? Where are the bathroom fittings?" Like I said, I'm always polite and would never purposely start a fight with a stranger, but her words, tone, and face instantly annoyed the hell out of me. Being already in a bad mood from dealing with people at work, I immediately decided for some reason there was no way I was going to tell her I didn't work here. I don't know why, but I seem to think she didn't deserve to know if she wasn't going to treat someone with basic human respect. "Well, that's rude," I said. That pushed her over the edge. She started yelling. "What's GD rude is you GD ignoring me when it's your GD job to help me. Are you going to tell me where the bathroom fittings are, or do I need to go find someone who isn't an R word?" Then she stared, hand on hip, as if I somehow didn't realize that she actually doesn't deserve anything she demands. Why would I help someone who's screaming at me? You have no idea how to treat people properly, do you? I said this getting annoyed. After more yelling, she threatened to get my GD manager and that I'd lose my GD job, not helping a customer. People around were starting to stare. Now, I gotta admit, something in my head snapped and I upped my volume about 10 times. "Hey, be my guest, idiot. Get the manager, see if I care. Just piss off. Seriously, stop yelling at me. Go away." She stood there silent for a couple seconds in disbelief that I said that, then stormed off yelling and cursing that I'd be fired, etc. All the while her child was visibly stressed out at all the yelling happening right in his ear. So I went back to looking at heaters, trying to get my adrenaline levels back to normal. I chose one, and after browsing for another few minutes, I head to the cashier at the front, and standing there in line is Miss Moron and her kid. There's nobody behind her, and I walk up and take the next place in line, wondering if she'll notice me. When it's her turn, she goes up to the cashier and unloads her stuff, but it's fairly noisy in the shop, so she can't hear the cashier ask if she was paying by cash or card. She got flustered and told him twice to repeat it. I couldn't help myself. I leaned over and said, "Cash or card? Are you GD deaf?" She was startled, looked over and recognized that it was me, the unhelpful employee, and started yelling at the cashier that I was the worst store assistant she'd ever met, that I should be fired for giving this store such a bad name. The cashier looked at me, standing in line with a heater and wallet in hand, and said, "Ma'am, he's a customer." No, he works here and refused to help me," she trailed off, realizing that everything about me indicated my doesn't work here status. She swiped her card, grabbed her stuff, and left without saying another word. I had a laugh at the cashier after explaining what had happened. Sorry there's no big climax to the story. I just needed to vent. A double bluff at the United Nations. This happened to me in 1996. I was a freshman in college and got to go on with the National Model United Nations because I had nothing better to do. Later, that translated into a lot of staff opportunities through various UN agencies, But at the time, I was just some idiot punk girl learning how to drink a great deal of alcohol in international territory. During the day, we play-acted being fancy diplomats. My college got assigned Gabon, which was extra interesting that week because we had an Ebola outbreak IRL and got briefings from the actual Gabonese delegates and assistants. I am visibly not Gabonese, but most people hadn't even heard of it, much less know it's in sub-Saharan Africa. When I was head delegate at NMUN 1 year for Ireland, now that made a lot more sense, what with all the freckles. I went to the UN store to shop for some souvenirs, a little Gabon flag, because where am I going to find one of those back home in Colorado? Postcards, the usual stuff. So as I looked at the postcards, a tourist saw the UN symbol on my security badge and asked me a few questions about the maps in the gift shop. I answered her questions because I'd been drooling over the map section myself. She looked at my badge a little closer to thank me by name and saw United Nations Delegate and Gabonese Republic. She turned pale and apologized for wasting my time. Miss Ambassador. Of course, I reassured her that it was no problem and to enjoy her trip to the United Nations. Later, I realized that while she'd first mistaken me for a gift shop employee, and why wouldn't she now had one of those great New York tourist stories about her awkward encounter with an actual UN diplomat, which I also was not. I just wanted her to get the maps and have a great time. I love this. And you know she's going to go home and tell everyone about meeting the ambassador to Gabon and how down-to-earth and delightful they were. LOL, a little souvenir for you both. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.